Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Welcome in. Glad to have you spend a few minutes of your day with me. Here's what we're talking about today. A federal judge yesterday blocked the Trump administration from rearresting Salvadoran migrant Kilmar Abrego Garcia into federal immigration custody, an update that comes just days before he decided to appear in Nashville for a key court date in a separate criminal case. Law enforcement officials say the DNA testing in Nancy Guthrie's case yielded no database match. We have an update on the ongoing investigation in Arizona. With less than 9 months before a politically bruising battle in the November midterm elections, the realities of a one-seat majority are bearing down on the House GOP. In today's show, we'll talk about how this may affect President Trump's agenda. And Whoopi Goldberg has a whole different view of having your name appear on the Jeffrey Epstein list. As it turns out, her name is there. We got a lot to cover, so let's get started.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
This next case has become one of the most complicated immigration and separation of powers battles we've seen in quite some time. We're talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran national whose legal status has now bounced between immigration court, federal district court, deportation orders, criminal indictments, and now a major injunction from a rogue federal judge. This week, this federal judge stepped in again. Paula Zenas, a U.S. district judge, ruled yesterday that the Trump administration cannot rearrest Garcia into ICE custody, at least for now. Now, this wasn't just a temporary pause. She converted an earlier emergency order into longer-term injunctive relief. In plain English, she's telling the administration, you can't just scoop him up again while this case is playing out. And here's where it gets interesting. Judge Zena said the administration has failed to provide any good reason to believe that Garcia was about to be removed to a third country in the reasonably foreseeable future. She went further, accusing the government of making what she called empty threats to deport him to African nations where there was, in her words, no real chance of success. Now, according to court filings, the administration explored removal to Liberia, Uganda, and even Ghana. Judge Zenas essentially said none of those removals were realistic. No final notice of removal had been obtained. No concrete agreements have been put into place. And she criticized the administration for not pursuing Costa Rica, where Mr. Garcia had identified as his preferred third country. Now, whether you agree with this judge or not, this is where the legal tension ramps up because immigration enforcement is traditionally executive branch authority. But federal courts have stepped in when due process concerns have been raised by some of these illegals. And that's exactly what she cited. She said the government had done nothing to show that continued ICE detention would be consistent with due process protections. So how did we get here? Well, let's just kind of do a quick review. Abrego Garcia was deported back in March to El Salvador, which is his home country. That deportation the administration later acknowledged was an administrative error. There had been a 2019 court order blocking his removal. Now, Judge Zenith ordered him returned to the United States. He was brought back in June of last year. And that's when a separate criminal case emerged. He was detained in Nashville on federal human smuggling charges tied to a 2022 traffic stop. Here's the wrinkle that is fueling this latest controversy. The Justice Department later acknowledged that the criminal investigation had been opened and presented to a grand jury while he was sitting in a Salvadoran prison. At the same time, government lawyers were telling the court they had no power to bring him back. That's the kind of timeline that makes judges, particularly this rogue judge, raise their eyebrows. Waverly Crenshaw is a judge overseeing the criminal case in Nashville. He's already ruled that Garcia has shown a reasonable likelihood that the prosecution could be vindictive. Now think about that. Doesn't mean he's innocent. Doesn't mean charges are dropped. But it means the court believes there's enough evidence to question whether the case was brought in retaliation by the government. Now, let's keep in mind, this is a man who doesn't deserve to be in our country to begin with, okay? He's illegal. He should not be here. And we got all these judges coming to his rescue. Crenshaw has ordered internal DOJ documents to be turned over. He wants testimony. He wants answers. Next week's hearing in Nashville could determine whether the criminal case gets dismissed entirely. So that's sort of the backdrop. This case is no longer just about one illegal migrant. It's about separation of powers. It's about how far executive authority goes in deportation cases. It's about whether district court judges like these are overstepping their authority. And administration officials argued that whether they're simply enforcing constitutional guardrails or they're overstepping their boundaries. DHS officials have been very blunt. Tricia McLaughlin, Assistant Secretary at DHS, said the order lacks any valid legal basis and vowed to fight it tooth and nail. That tells you appeals are likely coming. And here's the political reality. Immigration enforcement remains one of the most emotionally charged issues in our country today. On one side, you've got Americans who believe strongly that the executive branch must have firm authority to remove individuals who are here unlawfully, particularly when criminal allegations are involved. On the other side, you've got civil liberties advocates arguing that due process applies to everyone on U.S. soil, citizen or not. And federal judges are now smack in the middle, and some of these rogue leftist judges are siding with the group who believe that they have the same rights that you and I do, those of us who are citizens. You've likely seen the images. Protesters outside courthouses, activists holding signs demanding Garcia's release, critics blasting the administration for what they call retaliatory prosecution. At the same time, immigration hardliners argue this case shows exactly why the system is broken. Deportation orders ignored, removals blocked, criminal cases entangled in procedural fights. Think about, too, how much money it is costing us to keep this guy in our country. I don't know that anyone has challenged the fact that he's here illegally. They're just splitting hairs over how we get rid of him, how we get him out of the country. And we're wasting a lot of time and a lot of money over this guy. Now, here's what's undeniable. The judiciary is asserting itself forcefully. Judge Zenith is essentially saying, if you want to detain him, show me lawful authority. If you want to deport him, follow the procedures. If you want to prosecute him, make sure it's not retaliatory. Well, who decides that? Who decides if it's retaliatory or not? I mean, if he was doing something wrong in Nashville, doesn't the Nashville authorities have the ability to bring those charges against him? So what happens next? Where are we with this? Short term, Mr. Garcia remains on strict release conditions. He will appear in Nashville next week for that critical hearing. If Judge Crenshaw dismisses the criminal case, this entire situation changes dramatically. If he does not, and if the prosecution survives, The administration may try again to detain or remove him once procedural hurdles are cleared. This is just amazing that our government is having to go through this to get rid of an illegal, to send him back, well, I guess not home because he doesn't want to go home, but to somewhere other than the U.S. Now, the White House have made it very clear that appeals of Judge Zenas' order will, in fact, be appealed. Here's White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt.
Today ordered the immediate release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from ICE detention. Does White House have a response to that, and does the administration plan to appeal that decision?
Absolutely. The White House, the administration opposed this activism from a judge who is really acting as a judicial activist, which we've unfortunately seen in many cases across the country. Abrego Garcia is present in our country illegally. He is a proven human trafficker. He is a proven gang member. The administration has evidence of that. And as you saw from the Department of Homeland Security, they issued a statement saying they'll continue to fight this legal battle in court.
But again, keep in mind, what we're watching isn't just immigration policy in action. We're watching the friction points of American government: executive power, judicial oversight, due process, national sovereignty, political pressure. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's exactly why these cases matter. Because however you feel about the immigration debate, the real test is whether the rules are applied consistently and whether or not we're allowed to get these bad guys off of our soil. Whenever court orders are followed, whether removals are lawful, whether prosecutions are based on evidence rather than retaliation, that's the standard. But we have no reason to believe that the Trump administration is doing anything other than what the American people have charged him to do, and that's deport the illegals. It's just that simple. Joey Hudson here. You tried keto, paleo, Weight Watchers, intermittent fasting. You lose weight, then it comes right back. You blame yourself, your willpower, your discipline. But here's the truth. It was never about willpower. There's one thing that determines whether your body burns fat or stores it, and if you don't fix that first, every diet will fail. At PhD Weight Loss, they identify that one thing, and they build a plan that works with your body, not against it. And if you call now, you're going to get 2 weeks free in the program, and they'll pay for your food so you can finally see real answers without more trial and error. If you've done the yo-yo dieting and want clarity, call PhD Weight Loss now and mention Joey Hudson. No more guessing, just answers. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900. Say Joey Hudson. That's 864-644-1900. Also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. That's myphdweightloss.com. Do it once and for all. Lose the weight the right way by calling PhD Weight Loss today. You know, the big breaking news over this past weekend was the fact that they had found these gloves in the Nancy Guthrie case, and that they were sending them off to a private third-party lab in Florida to check for DNA. Well, we got the results back yesterday. The unknown male DNA profile on the glove is found about 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's home, has been run through the database, did not result in any hits, according to Pena County Sheriff Chris Nanos in a news conference yesterday. DNA recovered from Guthrie's home also did not match records in the FBI database, according to the sheriff. The sheriff confirmed that the DNA on the glove was different from the DNA found inside of the home. The FBI confirmed the news to Fox News Digital yesterday. Sheriff Nano said, "We're hopeful that we're always getting closer, but the news now, I think, is we had heard this morning that, of course, the DNA on the glove that was found 2 miles away was submitted to CODIS, and I just heard that CODIS has had no hits." The sheriff's office later confirmed clarity, writing on X, the DNA was submitted to CODIS was from the set of gloves found 2 miles away. Also, Pima County Sheriff Nanos said there was no evidence that Nancy Guthrie was taken across the border into Mexico, though investigators are aware of the region's proximity as a search for the 84-year-old continues. During an interview on Fox News with Jonathan Hunt, the sheriff was asked whether authorities were considering the possibility that Miss Guthrie may have been transported into Mexico. The sheriff said this, "I'm sure the FBI has looked into that as well, but no. We check all the leads we have. We're like everybody else. We know where Mexico is in relation to this, and it's a possibility, but no, we have nothing to indicate that. The sheriff emphasized that investigators are continuing to follow available leads, but have not uncovered any information suggesting Ms. Guthrie was taken across the border. And there's more confusion over the ongoing investigation, as a Arizona gun store owner says an FBI agent showed him pages of photos and names tied to a kidnapping probe and asked him to check for recent gun purchases. Even as the sheriff disputes reports, investigators have narrowed their focus to specific people. Philip Martin is co-owner of Armor Bearer Arms in Tucson. He told Fox News an FBI agent visited his store with 3 pages containing photos and the names of roughly 18 to 24 people, asking whether any had purchased a firearm within the past year. Mr. Martin said he was initially skeptical, but agreed to help out of sympathy for the victim's family. He said anything that could help them find the person, I was willing to do. According to Martin, he typed each of the names on the list into the store system, which would display identifying information the person had made a purchase. He said none of the names returned as a match. The agent, Martin said, told him investigators planned to visit other gun shops to check whether anyone on the list had bought a firearm in the past year. Now, during the interview with Fox, this was also Jonathan Hunt, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos pushed back on reports that investigators were asking gun stores about around 40 people or so. He said that's not true. Sheriff said when asked whether authorities had narrowed the suspect pool to a few dozen individuals. Again, he confirmed they have not. The sheriff said investigators have not zeroed in on a specific group, but are instead working through evidence that includes DNA, ring camera footage, and potential leads tied to a Walmart where they believe that the potential abductor bought the backpack and the clothing that was seen in the video footage. And finally, a 4th note has been sent to TMZ by somebody claiming to know what happened to Nancy Guthrie and demanding confidential payment for their information. The Harvey Levin, the founder's outlet, said, if you're worried about getting this money and you really do have this information, send it to us, Harvey said in his X post. He said, we will forward it to the FBI, and that way there's a record that we have that you supply this information. He went on to say, if they find her and they find the kidnapper, then at least there's evidence because we have it that you're the one who provided the information. So this is a way for you to get that money if this really is legitimate. Of course, everybody's scrambling to get the reward money that's being offered for the return of Miss Guthrie. The note appeared to have been sent by the same person who has been sending TMZ notes claiming to know what happened to Miss Guthrie, but refusing to disclose because they don't want to be arrested before they can claim the $100,000 FBI reward. They previously demanded a Bitcoin sum, which would be difficult to trace, before offering up their info. Harvey also quoted alarming information about the supposed circumstances of Nancy's disappearance the letter sender claimed to have. Harvey said, reading from the letter, I know what I saw 5 days ago south of the border, and I was told to shut up. So I know who he is, and that was definitely Nancy with them. Now, again, this leads to the rumors that maybe she was taken across the Mexican border line. This, of course, was the latest of a number of anonymous notes that TMZ has received since Miss Guthrie disappeared. TMZ was one of several news outlets that received a supposed ransom note demanding millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin in the week after Miss Guthrie went missing. The deadline for that ransom came and went without payment or further communication from the sender, which is why I've been saying all along, and I still believe, this is not about a kidnapping. If this was a kidnapping, wanting money, they would have already worked this out. The kidnapper would have been communicating with a way for them to transfer the money they're demanding. That's why I believe that it was a burglary gone bad. And that's a theory that some law enforcement seem to support as well. Days after, TMZ received a new note from somebody that was claiming to know what happened to Miss Guthrie. Apparently, the same individual who was still reaching out to TMZ as of Monday had some of the same information. They've sent other letters, which included admonishments for TMZ not taking them seriously and threats to stop helping if payment isn't sent. The problem is, though, the law enforcement is not necessarily able to do anything with the information that they are offering. And evidently, it's not enough that would warrant a transfer of the funds, or that would have already taken place. I think these are just people who are opportunists, who are greedy, and they're trying to take advantage of a very bad situation. All right, let's turn our eyes toward Washington, D.C., because there's an interesting thing happening within the so-called GOP majority in the U.S. House and the Senate, primarily in the House, though. We're less than 9 months away from the November midterms. Historically, that's already tough terrain for the party that holds the White House. We know that. We've talked about that. But now layer on top of that something even more fragile. What is pretty much a one-seat majority in the House of Representatives. One seat. That's not a cushion. It's not a buffer. That's walking a political tightrope with no net. So at the center of all this, of course, is Speaker Mike Johnson. And by extension, President Donald Trump, because when the House struggles, the president's agenda struggles as well. Last week was a pretty tough week. Of course, this week, they're back in their districts. They're not in session this week. But last week, twice on the House floor, a small group of Republican members joined Democrats to defeat leadership strategy, specifically on an effort to curb the president's unilateral tariff authority. Now, let's show let's kind of slow down here, unpack this for you, okay? Republican leadership attempted to block Democrats from forcing a vote that would limit the president's ability to levy tariffs on Canada without congressional consent. This has been a big back and forth that the Democrats have been crying foul since the president imposed the tariffs. They tried to tuck protective language into a procedural vote, which is a common tactic in Washington. We see this happen, but it failed. 3 Republicans, Kevin Kiley of California, Don Bacon of Nebraska, and Thomas Massie of Kentucky, joined Democrats and sank the procedural vote. That's what a one-seat majority looks like. It means 3 members can change everything. 3 members. 3 members of our majority party can sabotage what the president's trying to attempt. It didn't stop there. The very next day, Democrats successfully forced a vote on ending the president's emergency declaration at the northern border, which, if enacted, would effectively roll back the Canada tariffs. 3 more Republicans joined that effort. Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, Jeff Hurd of Colorado, and Dan Newhouse of Washington. So what's happening here? What is going on here? Well, it isn't just about tariffs. This is about politics in a midterm election year. And by the way, I'm going to have Congressman Ralph Norman on the show, and we're going to talk about this. I'm going to ask him some of these questions, so that'll be upcoming tomorrow, actually, I think it is. But here's, again, it's not just about tariffs. Veteran GOP strategist Doug Hay put it rather bluntly. He said, getting things done in Washington is already tough. Add a super slim majority and a shortened legislative calendar, and it's hard to see much moving through Congress this year. That's the reality. Here we are. And this was why I believe that President Trump was moving at breakneck speed last year, because he knew he had to get as much as he possibly could of his agenda through last year because of this type of nonsense. Now, behind the scenes, you've got frustration building when you talk with some of these men and women in the U.S. House. Interestingly, not necessarily, though, at House Speaker Johnson, who has not always been a favorite of the conservatives. Several House Republicans have said privately that Speaker Johnson is doing the best he can with the cards he's been dealt. The frustration is aimed at fellow Republicans who are opposing leadership. One member said there's disappointment that certain lawmakers aren't playing team ball the way they used to. But here's where it's kind of interesting. Not everyone agrees with that assessment. Arizona Congressman Eli Crane, a member of the House Freedom Caucus, actually defended the idea of putting bills on the floor even if leadership knows they don't have the votes. Now, here's the thinking. Congressman Crane made the point that's worth considering. Too often in Congress, leadership avoids votes that might fail, shielding members from having to go on record. Crane said, put it on the floor. Let the American people see where their representatives stand. That's transparency. It gets messy at times, but yes, he has a point in that we see how members are voting. So let's zoom out and let's look at the political chessboard. Some of these Republicans who broke ranks aren't running for re-election, like Don Bacon, Dan Newhouse. So they don't have to worry about voters going back to the polls. Others like Brian Fitzpatrick and Jeff Hurd are in battleground districts where independents might be the difference between winning and losing, and I understand that. In districts that lean purple, showing distance from party leadership can sometimes mean your own political survival. And let's be honest, tariffs are not universally popular, even inside the Republican conference. Now, many Republicans support the president's negotiating posture, but they're wary of blanket tariffs that impact local economies. And we have people, American voters, who are complaining about pricing still being high on a lot of products that we use on a daily basis. And a lot of those prices, or the increase in prices, are being attributed to tariffs. That tension is very real. I mean, that's something you can't avoid. You can't ignore. At the same time, President Trump has made it clear that there could be political consequences for those who cross him. He's already targeting Thomas Massie with a potential primary challenge. Some argue that is what President Trump does. That's sort of his go-to. If you don't vote the way I think you should, I'm going to target you with a primary in your district. How successful that may be is yet to be seen. Now, you have Republicans who are balancing two different things here. Stay aligned with the president, who remains deeply influential with the party, particularly the MAGA base, or signal independence to voters back home in swing districts. That's where you have the political tightrope. And all of this is happening while Democrats, led by House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, show very little interest in helping the president secure legislative victories. They just don't want to do it. They don't want to have some of those bipartisan issues come forward because they want Donald Trump to look like a loser this year because they want to regain the majority. And if they do, what we're seeing right now is just a glimpse of what is to come. So let's be realistic. Democrats see the political math. History says the party out of power often gains seats in the midterms. We've seen that. So why hand over a win? Well, there's no reason to necessarily. John Freary, a former House GOP communications director, put it very plainly. Democrats don't want to give Trump a legislative victory, and in the Senate, Republicans face the 60-vote threshold on most major legislation. So they're pretty safe over there. So even if something clears the House, it's probably going to stall in the U.S. Senate. And that makes this year's legislative runway pretty short. And here's another wrinkle. The House majority isn't just slim, it's fluctuating. Right now, Republicans are operating with essentially a one-seat margin. There's a special election coming to fill the seat vacated by Marjorie Taylor Greene, which could temporarily bolster the GOP, could add another vote, of course. But then there's an April race in a blue-leaning district in New Jersey that could narrow it again. So it's back and forth. Another special election won't happen until August to replace the late California Republican Doug LaMaffa. So in other words, we've got instability. Instability breeds caution. And caution in a political season, in an election year, is really taken very seriously. And it slows things down to a snail's pace. It means things aren't getting done, and I don't see that changing much between now and November. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. I had too much pleasure even thinking about talking with you about this next story when I discovered it yesterday. A friend of mine talks about Indian justice, meaning be careful how you treat someone because things have a funny way of coming back around. And we saw an example of that yesterday. Here's a story on The View as co-host Whoopi Goldberg addressed something head-on that's been circulating online, her name appearing on the Jeffrey Epstein files. Could not get any better. Here's Whoopi giving her explanation yesterday.
In the name of transparency, can you put up my name is in the files? Yes. And what does it say? It says Whoopi needs a plane to get to Monaco. John Lennon's charity, it should say Julian Lennon's charity, is paying for it. They don't want to charter, so they're looking for private owners. Here's the info. And they give all the information, and they're saying, do you want to offer your G2? Okay.
And it looks like they said no thanks.
Yeah.
So in other words, anybody can be on this list.
Well, this is my point, because I'm telling you, when I tell you people are trying to turn me into, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend.
You were too old for him.
I was not only too old, but it was at a time, where this is just not, you used to have facts before you said stuff.
But Trump is on the list 38,000 times.
Well, I can't speak to him, but I'm speaking about me because I'm getting dragged. People actually believe that I was with him. It's like, honey, come on. Yeah. Every man that I've ever been with, you've known about him because either the Inquirer wrote it about it. Yeah. Your people wrote about this stuff. So, no, I never had this,
So interesting. Now, being on the list, your name showing up in the files doesn't mean anything. How many times have we heard them talking about, well, just release all of it. Release the information. You're going to find Trump in there. Well, suddenly it doesn't matter anymore. Suddenly it's no big deal because one of their own's name shows up in the files. So here's what we have. Goldberg's name shows up in a 2013 email that references this flight to Monaco that she mentioned. The message suggested that John Lennon's charity was paying for the trip, and it asked whether Epstein would offer his private plane. According to documents released by the Justice Department, Epstein responded with a simple and misspelled no thanks. So he didn't want Whoopi Goldberg on his plane. Maybe that's why she's upset about it. Goldberg clarified that it should have read Julian Lennon's charity, not John Lennon's, and she emphasized something else very clearly. She never flew with him. Well, he never gave her the opportunity. Wonder if he'd have said, yes, I'll supply the jet, but I'm going to be on there with you. Wonder what she would have said then. And as you heard, she kind of joked that if people know anything about her, that she doesn't fly. Her co-host, Joey Behar, jumped in to make a broader point, that just because someone's name appears in a document doesn't mean there was a relationship or wrongdoing. Well, does that apply to President Donald Trump too, Ms. Behar? Does it? I think you and I know that she probably would say that, well, Donald Trump's the exception to the rule. Ms. Goldberg pushed back strongly against online speculation suggesting otherwise. She also made a cultural point that probably resonated with longtime viewers, that in today's environment, accusations can spread faster than facts. Yeah, when you have daytime talk show hosts like them speculating and fueling the speculation, like they often do with Donald Trump. Now, this comes amid, of course, the full public release of the Epstein-related documents under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, legislation passed by Congress, signed into law by President Trump back in November. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that all files covered under Section 3 of the law have now been released. So they're all out there. And here's where things are a little politically sensitive. The list includes more than 300 high-profile names, like, of course, President Trump, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Prince Harry, Bill Gates, Woody Allen, Mark Zuckerberg, and Bruce Springsteen, just to name a few. There are hundreds and hundreds of names in these documents. That's a wide spectrum of political figures, business leaders, royalty, Hollywood names, and some cultural icons as well. But the key language in the Attorney General's letter is very important here. It says that the list includes individuals who are or were government officials or politically exposed persons whose names appear in the files at least once, and that those names appear in a wide variety of context. In other words, appearance does not equal association with Jeffrey Epstein. Association does not equal wrongdoing. So a lot of these people, like Whoopi Goldberg, are having to change their whole perspective on this scandal. Because, again, for years now, they have speculated some association with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. Doesn't matter that President Trump just recently was able to prove that he had called the sheriff down in Florida on Jeffrey Epstein saying, you need to investigate this guy. He's suspicious. That doesn't matter. Epstein, of course, was a convicted sex offender with connections to very powerful circles. Before he was convicted, during his trial, and after he was convicted. His network touched finance, academics, politics, entertainment, and for years, the mystery surrounding his relationships fueled speculation across ideological lines, and he liked that. He loved the attention that he got. So when the full release happened and hundreds of prominent names are included, the internet does what the internet does. Screenshots, headlines, assumptions. You got people who hate Donald Trump picking and choosing what they publish. You got people who support President Donald Trump challenging those assumptions. That's the environment that Whoopi Goldberg finds herself in now and responding to. Now, politically, it's a very complicated landscape. You have critics of the president pointing out his name appears in the documents. You have supporters pointing out the Democrats and celebrities across the spectrum who are also listed. And you have media and people in the media like Ms. Goldberg trying to clarify how their names appeared at all. I mean, this is what transparency looks like. Messy, it's incomplete, often misunderstood. And here's something worth noting. The law requires a release of names where they appear at least once in the files. Does not categorize them by type of mention. It does not distinguish between a declined plain request and a social event. It simply just discloses the names that appeared in the files. It's just that simple. Sorry, Ms. Goldberg, but this is a case of Indian justice.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.